Firstpost reports from the world's second largest continent. Hello, I'm Alison Lagrange. A very warm welcome from Durban, South Africa. We get you the news and the newsmakers from Africa. From elections to climate change to innovations and opportunities. As the world's attention shifts, we report from Africa, the heart of the global south. Join me every weekday live on Firstpost. Hello and welcome to Firstpost Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Alison Lagrange, coming to you live from Durban, South Africa. First, let's take a look at the headlines. Israel vows to make Iran pay for firing hundreds of missiles at its territory, with Tehran warning it would launch a bigger attack if targeted. Ukrainian forces withdraw from withdrew as Russian forces take charge of the eastern Ukrainian town, a bastion that resisted intense attacks since the beginning of the war. A Chinese Coast Guard fleet enters the Arctic Sea for the first time for a joint patrol with Russian counterparts, marking 75 years of diplomatic relations between Beijing and Moscow. South Korea's President Yoon Suk-yeol dials Japan's new Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba. The two leaders agree that a united response with the US is needed to counter North Korea. And at least 45 people dead and dozens still missing as two migrant boats carrying over 300 people sink off the coast of Djibouti in the Red Sea. Hello and welcome. We start with Kenya, where for the past few weeks all has not been well between President William Ruto and his deputy, and the rift between the two is now out in the open. An impeachment motion has been launched against Kenya's Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua. Now a move further likely to add to the already complicated political situation in the East African country. Now, Kenyan lawmakers tabled a motion to impeach Gachagua for gross violation of the Constitution. Ruto's allies have accused Gachagua of undermining government, promoting ethnically divisive politics, involvement in corruption, as well as having a role in Kenya's recent deadly anti-government protests that were triggered by the proposal of the controversial, now scrapped, tax hikes.
I will also specifically demonstrate that the person of the Deputy President has committed the offense of gross misconduct in the manner of insubordination, insubordinating the presidency and the Kenyan state. The Kenyan state is our soul, and if you insubordinate the state, you are not worth being a state officer.
The impeachment motion was supported by some 291 members of parliament, well beyond the required threshold of 117. However, President Ruto has maintained silence on the proceedings. After a 10-day tour of the United States, where he took part in the UNGA, the president has returned rather quietly, with no fanfare or no social media posts or any comments about the brewing political storm in his country. The impeachment, meanwhile, is expected to sail through both houses of parliament easily. This as opposition members have now joined hands with Ruto's party after the protests that forced the president to form a broad-based government. However, there is no date yet for when the impeachment will take place. Kenya's deputy president has refuted all the allegations against him. In recent days, he has spoken of being sidelined by his party. Tensions between Ruto and his deputy had been simmering for quite some time. The deputy president has also been absent from seeing off his boss at the airport when he travels abroad and receiving him when he returns. Now, once a very little-known politician, Gachagua climbed up the political ranks to become Kenya's second-in-command. He was chosen by Ruto in 2022 to serve as his deputy, which not many were expecting. Even before he assumed the big role, he was arrested for corruption charges, but these charges were dropped after he became the deputy president. Gachagua was a businessman who hails from the Mount Kenya region. He played a key role in gathering support for Ruto in the vote-rich region. He now warns that President Ruto will suffer a trust deficit from Kenyans if he supports the impeachment, and that his removal will stir discontent within his bastion. But reports suggest that President Ruto has a plan to avoid this. As per reports, Kenya's Interior Secretary, Kithure Kindiki, appears to be taking some of Deputy President's responsibilities. Just like Gachagua, the Interior Secretary also comes from Mount Kenya. Now, the Deputy President has also been isolated after opposition members joined Ruto's government in the aftermath of the youth-led protests. Further adding to his worries, Kenya's Police Directorate of Criminal Investigations has recommended charges against Gachagua's close allies, accusing them of planning and mobilizing the anti-tax protests. The protest that began in June turned into a massive campaign against President William Ruto. At least 50 people died in the Gen Z-led protests, and authorities were blamed for mishandling the protesters. Now, many of the young people who were at the forefront of the protests have meanwhile dismissed suggestions that Gachagua's allies were behind the rallies. They see it as an attempt to deflect attention from bad governance, and they also demand that if the deputy president is sacked, the president should leave too. Now, how will the impeachment of the deputy president impact the political situation in Kenya amid worsening economic worries? Now, from Kenya in East Africa, we move to Nigeria in the West. Dozens of Nigerians marched through the streets of the capital Abuja and the commercial capital of Lagos to protest against economic hardships. Angry protesters raised slogans against President Bola Tinubu, calling him a thief. Now, to quell the protests, the police fired tear gas in Abuja. However, it later said that the tear gas was used to forestall some miscreants who were taking advantage of the protest to loot shops. Tuesday's protest coincided with Nigeria's 64th Independence Day, which the protesters dubbed as the National Day of Survival. Protesters waved placards and the Nigerian national flag while demanding better opportunities and better jobs for young people.
Poverty is not from heaven. Poverty is man-made and is made by the politicians. Why the politicians want to use this opportunity to celebrate what is not, the people are saying we have nothing to celebrate. Nigeria is not independent after 64 years. Nigeria is in pain and hardship. Nigeria is in poverty, insecurity. Nigeria is in mass suffering, starvation. The poverty level has increased even after 1 year that Bola Tinubu came into power.
Protesters claimed that measures implemented by President Tinubu's government, such as a quarterly cash transfer benefit, are insufficient to help them tide over the current cost of living crisis. They also criticized the extravagance and lavish lifestyle of Nigeria's political leaders, while ordinary citizens continue to be burdened by financial woes. Now, President Tinubu's administration also gave quarterly cash transfers of about 25,000 naira or $15 to 15 million households. In July, Nigeria doubled the minimum wage to 70,000 naira or $44. But these measures failed to address concerns and to assure many Nigerians about the state of Nigeria's economy. In his Independence Day speech, President Bola Tinubu asked the people to be patient and said that he was aware of the struggles of ordinary Nigerians. Defending the controversial economic measures, Tinubu said that they were necessary and were beginning to bear results. Now, President Tinubu also announced a 30-day National Youth Conference to address the challenges faced by Nigerian youngsters, who constitute more than 60% of the country's population.
I am deeply aware of the struggles many of you face in these challenging times. Our administration knows that many of you struggle with rising costs and the search for meaningful employment. I want to assure you that your voices are heard. I am pleased to announce the gathering of a national youth conference. This conference will be a platform to address the diverse challenges and opportunities confronting our young people.
Nigeria's economic crisis has been triggered by a cocktail of factors, such as COVID-19 pandemic, economic mismanagement, and insecurity in the country's north. Now, after coming to power in May of 2023, President Bola Tinubu implemented the World Bank recommended measures for countries' long-term economic stability. President Tinubu removed a key subsidy that kept fuel prices low for ordinary Nigerians. He also scrapped the policy of pegging the Nigerian naira to the US dollar. This move led to the naira losing more than 50% of its value, making imports expensive. Now, these factors have majorly contributed to the current cost of living crisis, with inflation recorded at 32% in August. Now, this was Nigeria's second mass protest in the last 2 months. During the last protest in August, at least 20 protesters were killed in clashes with security forces, while hundreds were arrested. Nigeria's current administration has pitched the impact of the current economic measures as a temporary stumble necessary for the country's long-term economic stability. But the ongoing cost of living crisis continues to test the economic resilience of millions of ordinary Nigerians. And staying on with West Africa, Niger has had a full-blown face-off with its former colonial ruler France. At the 79th UN General Assembly, the junta-led nation accused Paris of funding and training terrorist groups in the Sahel region. These allegations were leveled by Niger's Foreign Affairs Minister, who denounced France's new recolonisation strategy. Listen in.
Here I also would like to condemn the subversive actions and new strategy of recolonization espoused and pursued by France, which trains, finances, arms, and provides intelligence to the terrorist groups of the Sahel. It provides food and lodging to its local lackeys, some of which occupy the diplomatic premises of Niger in Paris in flagrant violation of the Vienna Convention of 1961 on diplomatic relations. So far from halting the momentum underway in the Sahel, these attempts at destabilization are only strengthening our country's resolve to forge ahead as we pursue our goals.
Niger's top diplomat's address was a strong message against the West. He accused certain Western powers of trying to exploit the resource-rich nations and attempting to destabilize African countries. He also talked about Niger's neighbors, Burkina Faso and Mali, who are also battling Islamist insurgencies. The minister hailed Niger's alliance with the two junta neighbors that was formed after ditching the West-backed regional bloc ECOWAS. Niger's minister said that his country is choosing to fund its crises itself, rather than turning to rich nations who exploit them. He also added his country does not need lessons on democracy.
That it is not the affluent countries that will be finding solutions for us. I affirm that these solutions are within us. They consist in refusing to demean ourselves by begging for aid. They consist in building worthy partnerships in which our natural resources are paid for at the price that they deserve and benefits invested for a population. It is in this spirit that my country is using its own funds.
The Nigerian foreign minister also dragged Ukraine to the UN. Now, he accused Kiev of supporting terrorists in Mali. In July, several Malian soldiers and Russian Wagner fighters were killed in a major attack by rebel forces. Ukraine's intelligence officials claimed involvement in the attack, after which Mali and Niger cut ties with Kiev. Junta nations of West Africa, Niger, Mali and Burkina Faso have turned their backs on traditional Western powers and have instead forged closer partnerships with Russia. After military governments took charge, they expelled the Western troops. French troops withdrew Niger in 2023, while the last remaining US troops left in September of this year. As per reports, France is significantly reducing its presence in Central and West Africa amid rising anti-French sentiment. Now, US and France were heavily involved in fighting terrorism in West Africa, and the shift in alliances is a big blow to their operations. West Africa had been facing a worsening Islamist insurgency linked to the Islamist State and to Al-Qaeda for years. Now, the juntas took over with a promise to end the violence and decried the inability of the West to do so. Rejecting the Western powers, West Africa's junta states turned to Russia for security assurances. The Russian paramilitaries are training and fighting along with the junta's forces. However, the region still remains a hotspot of terrorism. And finally, in North Africa, Libya's cattle breeders face a devastating blow as livestock diseases spread rapidly around the country. Farmers in the city of Misrata say that illnesses such as the lumpy disease have claimed the lives of more than 2,500 cows in just a year, and the lack of timely vaccinations for these animals has left them helpless, with huge financial losses and even bankruptcy. Our final report tells you more about Libya's crippling cattle industry.
In the North African nation of Libya, things are not going well for the cattle breeding industry. This is especially in Misrata, the third largest city of Libya and the hub of its dairy production. According to several farm owners, their cattle often suffer illnesses such as foot and mouth disease and lumpy disease that have spread across the country in recent years. The foot and mouth disease, or the FMD, is a highly contagious viral infection that affects animals, including cows, pigs, sheep, goats and deer. If not treated on time, the infection can prove to be fatal for the livestock. Meanwhile, lumpy disease, as the name suggests, is a type of viral sickness in cattle where the animals have nodules on their skin, mucous membranes and internal organs. This disease could be fatal.
These barns had 741 cows. Recently, we were exposed to foot and mouth disease and lumpy skin disease, which led to the death of more than 200 cows and 170 calves. Now the cows are suffering from high temperatures. The normal temperature for cows is supposed to be 36 or 37 degrees Celsius. Currently, the cow's temperature is between 40 and 41. This affects the milk production rate. These cows are considered to have no milk at all.
Farmers in Libya say that while they try to keep their cattle safe and secure from these deadly diseases, the absence of timely vaccinations has claimed the lives of thousands of animals. And this number is only increasing, particularly due to the lumpy disease, which was identified for the first time in the North African country just last year.
Breeders suffer from problems including foot and mouth disease and lumpy skin disease. Of course, foot and mouth disease is an endemic disease, and unfortunately, in the absence of vaccination, the disease has spread in large quantities. Lumpy skin disease has also been introduced to us. This devastating disease has caused us very large losses, whether in the death of cows or a severe shortage of milk. The disease, as Libyans know it, is a disease that we have recently learned about. It is a dangerous and destructive disease. This disease has completely destroyed our projects and caused more than 2,500 deaths of milk-producing cows.
The lack of vaccination for cattle has also led to huge financial losses for the dairy industry in Misrata. And the scarcity of cows has prompted the price of these animals to go so high that many breeders face bankruptcy.
As for the breeders, they have suffered huge losses and people have been harmed and have left the market. These losses are due to the lack of vaccination. The state has not cared about providing us with vaccination. The price of a cow is now expensive. A cow costs from 17,000 to 25,000 Libyan dinars, or 3,550 to 5,220 US. This means that when a breeder loses 5 or 6 cows, his project is over.
After battling such fatal diseases, most of the cows produce little or no milk. This takes an extra financial toll on the farmers, and adding to their hardships is the ongoing political and economic instability in Libya that has left them to suffer alone with very little hope for recovery.
And that's it on the show for today. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.